if you graduate to the point where you say all of the prayers every day, you will say Psalm 145 3 times a day. And there are sources that give that psalm precedence. If you say it with intention, you earn certain types of merit and you can expect certain types of reward. And I must confess, for many years, it was just a jumble. One thing after another, no obvious plan, no development, no direction, no theme. And it bothered me because to say it 3 times a day and feel that you're just putting together a jumble of ideas with no particular order or sequence or significance, it was disturbing to me. I mentioned it to my oldest son, and he said, take a look at Rav Hirsch's commentary. Now, Rav Hirsch, one of the great commentators, and he was very big on structure, analysis, categorization. I went through his translation and commentary, and I would say it gave me about 75%, which made me very happy. Then there were a few other things that I learned in addition, so maybe I'm at a position now of 80%, but I don't feel lost anymore. I don't feel like I'm just wandering through a maze. So I'd like to try to share with you what Rav Hirsch says. Now, we call it Ashrei, but the truth is that the first 2 verses of Ashrei do not come from the 145th Psalm, and the last verse also does not come from the 145th Psalm. They are taken from other Psalms elsewhere. So I'm going to skip them. I'm going to focus on the 145th Psalm, which, as you probably know, is alphabetical, except for one letter that's left out. Now, the first thing that Rav Hirsch points out is that you can divide the verses into 2 categories. Those that describe speaking and those that don't. Those that describe things other than speaking. So let's start with that and go through the verses. I think you'll see that there's even a kind of numerical structure based on that. The first verse says, I will exalt you, bless your name. That's done in words. Every day I'll bless you, I will laud your name. That's done in words. So these 2 verses talk about talking. Hashem is great and exalted and exceedingly lauded. His greatness is beyond investigation. That talks about Hashem and Hashem's qualities. So I have 2 verses that talk about talking and 1 verse that talks about Hashem. Okay, generation to generation will praise your acts and will tell of your mighty deeds. That's talking. The splendorous glory of your power and your wondrous deeds shall I discuss. That talks about talking. And of your awesome power they will speak. Your greatness I shall relate. Speak, relate, it's talking. They will express remembrance of your abundant goodness and sing joyously of your righteousness. Again, it's about talking. So now I have 4 in a row whose subject is talking. Now, gracious and merciful is Hashem, slow to anger and great in kindness. That's talking about Hashem. It's not talking about talking. Hashem is good to all. His mercies are on all his works. That also is describing Hashem. It's not talking about talking. Now, if you've been keeping track, it was 2 and 1, and now it's 4 and 2. That's probably not an accident. Then you have, all your works shall thank you, your devout ones shall bless you. That's back to talking again. All the glory of your kingdom they will speak, your power they will tell. It's talking about talking again. To inform human beings of his mighty deeds, the glorious splendor of his kingdom. It's about talking. So now you got 3. So you had 2 and 1, 4 and 2, and now 3. Now you have a string of verses, all of which are relating qualities of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. 7 of them actually. And then if you go down to 3 lines from the bottom on this page 69, I didn't tell you what the page on, sorry. On page 69 now. The very last verse in this one, Psalm 145 is, may my mouth declare the praise of Hashem, and may all flesh bless his holy name forever and ever. So we're back to talking. So the psalm ends with talking. It's pretty obvious that there is a structure here. That's point number 1. Are we together so far? Okay. Now the second thing that Rav Hirsch suggests we do is look at who's talking and see how that goes. Okay, back to the beginning. I. So there's an I here that, since King David is the author of this psalm, it's not a bad idea to identify with King David. King David says, I will exalt you, my God, the King, and I will bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you, and I will Lord. So the first 2 verses talk about King David talking. The third is about Hashem. Now watch what happens with 4, 5, 6, and 7. 4, generation to generation will praise your acts and of your mighty deed and tell of your mighty deeds. This is the public, and generation to generation. Then the splendorous glory of your power and your wondrous deeds I shall discuss. That's back to King David. Of your awesome power they will relate. That's back to the public. And your greatness I shall relate. Back and forth. Back and forth. And now they will express the remembrance of your abundant goodness and sing joyously of your righteousness. This is all them talking. So what you have here is 4 verses. The first verse, which is Dalet, the last line on the previous page, is the public speaking, mentioned twice, the whole verse about the public speaking. Then comes the next verse, which is the whole verse describing King David speaking. The next verse, trades. They speak, and King David speaks. And then the final one is a double on the public again. So there's some kind of back and forth going on here. Some kind of conversation going on here. And then, if you look at Yud, if you look at Yud, which is the next 3 verses of speaking, all your works shall thank you, all your devout ones shall bless you. They will speak, they will tell, to inform human beings. All 3 of these are the public speaking. So at this point, the public has taken over. Then you have 7 verses that describe HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the very last one is, again, a back and forth. May my mouth, I won't say may, I think it should, my mouth shall declare the praise of Hashem, that's King David speaking, and all flesh will bless, and that's the people speaking. So it's back and forth. That's the second point. The third point that Hirsch suggests is, look at the subjects that are discussed. Now that you know that there is a conversation, or at least a contrast back and forth of different speakers, let's see what the subjects that they discuss are. So back to the beginning again. In the first 2 verses, I'll exalt you, bless you, your name will be, and Lord you. It's speaking about praise. Speaking about King David praising Hashem. And then the third verse is, Hashem is great and greatly praised. His greatness is beyond investigation. Now here it is crucial to do a little philosophical analysis. What is great? In the Hebrew it's gadol. Gadol means big. I hope you appreciate the saying that the creator of the universe is big needs some help, right? Now, we use, and by the way, a lot of English phraseology is based on the Bible. English was spoken, and people were conversant with the Bible, and many of them were believers in the Bible. Great, which even today means big, also means outstandingly valuable, accomplished. Talk about a great baseball pitcher, a great mathematician. We're not talking about how tall he is, or how much he weighs, or his shirt size. The greatness is in the qualities that he possesses. In Hebrew, in the biblical Hebrew, the word gadol refers specifically to loving kindness. It's that quality that is described by the physical word gadol. In fact, when Moses pleads with God not to destroy the Jewish people after the golden calf, he says, Yigdal na koach Hashem, let God's strength be gadol. Okay, so what? You want him to move galaxies? What do you want him to do? No, gadol means loving kindness. And that's what he's asking for. He's asking for forgiveness. Now, why would gadol mean loving kindness? Where would that come from? So I have a speculation. Big is a comparative term. It's comparative and it's relative. A big mouse is much smaller than a small elephant. So big, first of all, is big for items in a particular category. And then, of course, big means larger than the small ones. If they're all the same size, you don't call one big and one small. So it's relative and it's comparative. Could you have something which was big in an absolute standard? Even though the word is really relative and it's really comparative, would it be possible to have something that's big in some absolute standard? Well, let me give you a possible example. Let's imagine something that's growing a certain amount per unit time. And let's imagine that time goes on forever. So every unit of time will become a unit larger. Eventually, pick any limit you like, pick any finite size you like, eventually this thing will outgrow it because it's going to grow forever. That would be big in the absolute sense that no matter what limit you set, this will exceed it. This will be big with a capital B. Now, God's loving kindness is going to express itself in the world to come, which is eternal. So if you sum up the loving kindness that God delivers, it gets bigger as time goes on, and there's more and more without end, which means any limit you would pick, any size you would pick, His loving kindness is going to pass that limit. That is a way in which you could use the word gadol in an absolute sense, even though it's a comparative term. Something that's growing will outgrow any possible limit. So I think that's an intellectual way to connect the word gadol with loving kindness. At any rate, in biblical literature, the word gadol connotes loving kindness. So, the first two verses describe King David as praising God, and the praise that he says is, God is loving kindness. God's focal quality is loving kindness. The principle with which he deals with the world is loving kindness. Okay. Now, let's see the next four verses which go back and forth. Generation to generation will praise your acts. What will they do? They'll praise your actions. Not what you are, but what you do. That's much more external. In Gimel, when King David is praising Hashem, he doesn't speak about his actions at all. He speaks about his nature. They start with actions. And what do they see in the actions? They will tell of your mighty deeds, power. They see in your actions power. Now this is genuine. God's actions are powerful. Whether it's the sea or it's the 10 to the 22 stars which he created for the moment's will, there's certainly a great deal of power there. But you might understand that power is a very low, unsophisticated, insensitive level on which to take in what God does. So, that's where they start. The next verse describes King David's response to them. They're praising God's mighty actions. What does King David say to them? The splendorous glory of your power and your wondrous deeds I shall discuss. You're looking at power. Look at the glory. Look at the splendor. Look at the wonder of the deeds, not just power. Look at the complexity. Look at the beauty. Look at the subtlety. Look at the, if you like, the engineering, the programming. Look at the organization of the universe, the fine-tuning of the universe. Look at the ecosystem. Look at the conditions of life that are provided. Don't just look at power. So, did they get it? Well, the next thing is, of your awesome power they will speak. Okay, they're stuck on power, but they see awe in the power. That's another madrega. That's a new level. Don't just look at the fact that there's a lot of kilowatts of electricity, a lot of ergs of energy or whatever. No, they look at the content, they look at its nature, look at its structure, and they're overawed by that. Okay. So then, what does King David do? He climbs up another level. Now he says, he talks about greatness, gadol, which is chesed. He's bringing them up to his perception, to the perception of chesed, of loving kindness. Do they get it? Well, look what they say. They will express a remembrance of abundance of goodness and speak joyously of your righteousness. They get it. Goodness and loving kindness are almost synonymous. Righteousness is an expression. So they've gotten to a spiritual level. King David has lifted them up from the primitive perception of mere power to the level of awesome power, to the level of goodness and righteousness. And having lifted them to that level, what do they say? Look at the words. Gracious, merciful, slow to anger, great in kindness, good to all, mercies on all his works. That's it. That's the song that David is singing. That's the theme that he wants to have expressed. And he succeeds in elevating them to that position. Okay, then as I told you, there's another introduction. Your works will thank you. Devout ones will bless you. Glory of the kingdom will speak. Power, inform human beings of his mighty deeds. And here, and the glorious splendor of his kingdom. This is now an introduction to 7 verses which describe what God does in the world, which we're going to look at in detail. And then you come at the bottom of the page to the last verse, which is back to speech. And I think that this last verse answers a question which this whole sequence raises. This I don't remember that I saw in reverse, but I think from where I'm coming from, this is an important ending to it. So King David started on the level of loving kindness. They started on the level of power. Through a double interaction with them, he raised them to his perception. They share his perception, and they go on to describe God in that way. Is this elevation that he created for them permanent? Or does it depend upon his continuous input? When he passes from the scene, and there's no one to take his place, will they remain on this level? Or do they need someone's continuous inspiration? Well, look at the last verse. And here I disagree with the translation here. My mouth shall declare the praise of Hashem, and all flesh shall bless his holy name forever and ever. As long as I'm doing it, they can be elevated by my example. If I exit the scene and nobody takes my place, they'll fall back down to the lower level. There's a continuous dependency on the inspiration of the person who has that higher spiritual grasp. And this is a message of the Torah in many places, especially the Hasidic movement. So that's the overall structure of Ashrei. We're together so far? Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's look at the 7 verses. Sorry.
I just, like, how do we understand the splendor? Like, what's the meaning when we refer to splendor?
Let me... Okay, the word in Hebrew is kavod. Kavod literally means honor. I guess you could describe it like this. You go through life and you meet people and you see things that people do and you also see nature. Some things call forth in a person a response of praise because they possess some kind of greatness. In English we say we honor them. We honor them. If this thing were permanent and somebody set out to destroy it, we would feel that it was a crime because he attacked something of great value. And we respond to things of great value with honor. So I think honor, but of course you'd have to explain it in a paragraph. I'm not complaining about the translation splendor. I just don't think it connotes this so well. The word kavod means something that's worthy of honor. And it could be a sunset, it could be a painting, it could be a human action, it could be a law, it could be a moral principle. Of course, it belongs to a Kodesh Baruch Hu in the primary sense. But that's what is roughly the concept, yeah. And this goes together with something I told you recently. We're talking about praising, things that are worthy of praise. That praise is objective, not subjective. So I'm not going to do that again tonight, but I think that's built in. Now, I'm not just expressing my feelings. My words express a judgment that this is worthy of honor. And if somebody disagrees, we could discuss it and we could settle who's right and who's wrong, because this is not just arbitrary, it's not just subjective. Okay, so now so this is Hashem supports. Hashem supports all the fallen ones and straightens all the bent. The eyes of all look to you with hope, and you give them their food in its proper time. You open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living thing. Righteous is Hashem in all his ways, and magnanimous, which means generous, in all his deeds. Hashem is close to all those who call upon him, to all who call upon him sincerely. He will do the will of those who fear him. He will hear their cry and save them. Hashem protects all who love him. Let's stop there. All of this is kindness. All of this is love. All of this is generosity. All of this is support. This was King David's theme. King David's theme was chesed, was loving kindness. Here you have 6.5 verses of straight loving kindness. Then the second half of this verse is all the wicked he will destroy. So it's 6.5 to 1. As the ratio, 6.5 chesed and a half of what you might call a reality factory. That it's not unrestricted, without standards. It's not willy-nilly, not blind. There are standards by which it can be cut short. But the overwhelming majority is support, care, love, giving. And that's the theme of the psalm, is the way Rabbi Hirsch describes it. Now, I think there's something else here which makes this point in a very dramatic way. This, again, I don't think Rabbi Hirsch says, but if you look at the letters, the first letter of each verse is in the order of the alphabet, except for one. You have the Mem, your kingdom is a kingdom spanning all eternities, reign is a reign of every generation, and then it skips to Samach. Nun is left out. So the Gemara says, why is Nun left out? Because Nun is the first letter of the word nofel. Nofel means to fall. So that's why it's left out. To which you could ask two questions. Number one, why should nofel be left out? I mean, what's wrong with putting nofel in? And number two, isn't the letter nun, the first letter of other words also? How about nosein, which means to give? You know, what would be wrong with putting in nosein, right? So this explanation needs an explanation. Now, I saw something really, I would say, astonishing in a sefer called Kerem B'Yavna, which is a commentary on Psalms, written by the Mashgiach of the Chabini Yeshiva. I'm not such a scholar. I was waiting for Mincha in the Boston Shul in Har Nof, and I had 3 minutes before Mincha, and there was a sefer on the table, so I picked it up to look for something. I said, wow, this is a commentary on Psalms. I wonder what he says about this. And he said something absolutely astonishing. So let's take a look again. Chaf. This is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 lines down on page 69. Of the glory of your kingdom they will speak, and of your power they will tell. Okay, that's kingdom, power. To inform human beings of his mighty deeds, that's power. And the glorious splendor of his kingdom. So that's power, kingdom. So we've got kingdom, power, power, kingdom. Okay, now, your kingdom is a kingdom spanning all eternities, and your reign, which means your being king, is over every generation. That's kingdom, kingdom. So let's sum it up what we have so far. We have kingdom, power, power, kingdom. Kingdom, kingdom. What comes next?
Power kingdom.
No, again. You have kingdom, power, and power, kingdom.
And power, power?
Yeah. Now you have kingdom, kingdom. What next comes is power, power. Right. It's power, power. And in Hebrew, the power is gevura. And gevura stands for strict judgment, strict accountability. And it includes punishment for things that go wrong. So at this point, if you're going to follow the pattern and you're going to put in a nun, the nun will be no fail. It'll be fall. It'll be fall because it's going to be power.
Power, power.
Power, power in the sense of judgment and punishment. So what does King David do? He sets it up and then he skips it. If you're paying attention, you think, here we go. Kingdom, power, power, kingdom, kingdom, kingdom. Power, power, no fail. No, don't put in no fail. Skip it. Don't have no fail. I don't want it there. No, we're not doing that. He's emphasizing the theme of loving kindness by skipping the prepared entry of gevura, which would be punishment, and that's what the Gemara means. The Gemara says the nun would be no fail. Of course, the nun is the first letter of no saying, but not in this context. It would have to be no fail. And by skipping it, what he's saying is, that's not my theme here. I think that's a brilliant 20th century interpretation of a psalm that's 3,000 years old, approximately, 2,800 years old. I didn't see nobody else said it before him, and I didn't see any explanation which, to me, explained why the nun would have to be for no fail, and why it has to be skipped. So I'm sharing that with you. Okay. Now, having said that this psalm is special and that if you say it, some say once a day, 3 times a day, you get certain special merit, of this psalm, there's one verse that stands out, that's prominent, that's the pay. You see in the indecipherably small letters in between the 2 horizontal lines. Concentrate while reciting the verse you open. It is customary to touch the arm tefillin. Let's say, but concentrate, because this is the key verse of the whole of Psukkah Zimra, the whole recital of the Psalms. This is it. This verse is the center of the whole thing. So it's worthy of some consideration what this verse means. Now, the way they've translated it here is an acceptable translation. If you look in the Nirkus Gedolos, this is one of the ways in which it is translated. However, as I heard from my Rebbe Zatzal once, if you look at the Hebrew, it doesn't say this translation in the most direct possible way. Poseich es yedecha, you open up your hand, umazbia le chochai rotzon. Literally, you satisfy to all living will. If you had wanted to write in Hebrew, satisfy the will of all living, it could have written Mazbia Ratzon Kol Chai. He satisfies the Ratzon of all living, Ratzon Kol Chai. It doesn't say that. It says Mazbia L'Chol Chai Ratzon. So now it's poetry. And it would be acceptable to translate it this way and just say it's poetical. You could do that. But there's another way to understand it. And that is, imagine that instead of saying Ratzon, it had said Lechem. Mazbia L'Chol Chai Lechem. Then you would translate it, he satisfies all life by giving them food. Lechem, by the way, means food. Sometimes means bread, but often means food. The animal sacrifices are called lechem. So, if I put lechem at the end of the verse instead of ratzon, it would mean you satisfy all life by giving them food. So now, if I translate that here, it would mean you satisfy all life by giving them will. Okay, well, what's that supposed to mean? How's that supposed to work? And the general idea is that when you act on God's will in you, that creates satisfaction. All other creatures have only God's will in them. That's the only will they have. It's the only way they can act. Human being has many wills, many directions, many thoughts. He has free will. He can make his choices. What he's being told here is that God planted a will in you, and when you act on that will, you'll achieve satisfaction. This thought needs some background to be appreciated. When we ask for physical benefits from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, every time we do that, we do it with the word sab'enu. Sab'enu means satisfy us. Not a lot, not enough, not more than the next guy, not more than last year. Satisfy us. This is an important key. There is a verse in Proverbs, Oiv kesef lo yizba kesef. He who loves kesef will never be satisfied with the kesef that he has. Now, the word kesef in that verse has two different possible translations. Some translate kesef, it literally means silver. Some translate kesef as money. A person who loves money will never have enough money, he'll never be satisfied with the money that he has. Rashi translates kesef as mitzvos. Someone who loves mitzvos will never be satisfied with the mitzvos that he has. Let's analyze those two ideas. Tell me, someone who loves money will never be satisfied with money. Is that a blessing? Is that a blessing or a curse?
A curse.
That's a curse. He never has enough money. He's always pining away for more money. Chazal put it this way. If he has 100, he wants 200. If he has 200, he wants 400. Right? As my Rabbi put it, that means the more you have, the more you lack. Which isn't a contradiction. It isn't a contradiction. So it means the more you get, the more unhappy you are because of the more that you lack. I used to wonder why Bill Gates gets out of bed in the morning. That's when he had $20 billion. What do you need more dollars for? It was 30 billion. It was 40 billion. And he still gets out of bed. He still goes to the office. He still makes deals. 50 billion. Holy cow. What's driving this man? Is he crazy? $60 billion. And then guess what? He discovered something. He started giving money away. Because it's not a life just to make more money. Money is a means to some end or other. What more are you going to do with it? And he created the world's biggest foundation for charity. Warren Buffett joined him. They give away billions of dollars every year. So someone who loves money per se will never be satisfied with the money. That's a curse. Someone who loves mitzvos will not be satisfied with the mitzvos that he has. Is that a blessing or a curse? That's a blessing. Not to be satisfied with the spirituality that you have, always to be looking for more, how to grow spiritually. Some want to say that's the definition of life. If you're not looking to grow spiritually, you're not spiritually alive. Okay. Having said that, it's time for a trick question. This verse that we're talking about says, God satisfies living creatures, right? This verse is talking about physical or spiritual? What did we just say? We just said if you're satisfied with your spirituality, that's a curse. The verse is not describing God cursing us. The verse is not describing God cursing us. Chas v'shalom. That he should open up his hand and satisfy us with spirituality. No, it's talking about the physical. This verse is talking about the physical. I know it's the Psalms and it's King David and it's all holy, so how could you talk about the physical? It's got to be the spiritual. But that's wrong. Here, and what it teaches you is that the key to a blessing of physical is satisfaction. Sab'enu mituvecha. Satisfy us with your good. That's the real blessing. So now, that real blessing, to be satisfied with the physical that you have, that blessing comes from acting on God's will in you. That's the message of Lichol Chai Rotzon. Let me just give you a little hint as to what that could mean. One of God's names is spelled Shin Dalad Yud, and the message in it, Chazal, one of the many messages that Chazal spell out is She'amar Olam Odai. He's the one who said to his world, enough. And the picture that's given is, in the creation process, the world was getting bigger and bigger, expanding and expanding. No, it's not the Big Bang. No, it's not the expansion of the universe, because the Big Bang is the expansion of space. Just space. Not more energy, not more mass, just space. Here we're talking about more and more stuff, number one. And then, the second proof that it's not the Big Bang, is that God called a halt to it. He said, stop! Until he said, stop. Now the word he used for stop is die. Enough. Ask yourself, someone's watching a process, measuring it, and at a certain point he says, enough. Where's he standing? What's his standpoint? What's his outlook? Well, obviously, this process that's growing and growing is a means to an end. And he's measuring it against the end, and he's thinking, is it enough for this purpose or not? Well, let's have a little more. Okay, we have enough. That means it isn't intrinsically valuable. It doesn't stand on its own. If it were intrinsically valuable, the more you have, the better. The more good you have. No, it's a means to an end. And that's the way in which you achieve satisfaction, because you know you have enough of the physical to the end, which is spiritual. And that's what it means to act on God's will within you. God's will within you is what orients you towards spirituality. And that's how you can draw a line and say, enough to the physical. My down-home example of this is in the summertime, people live in bungalow colonies in the mountains. They suddenly work in Manhattan, and Friday afternoon they drive up, spend Shabbos and Sunday in the mountains. Okay, but it's late, and he's driving his car, and he's running out of gas. And he figures, I've got to get there as fast as possible. I need 7 gallons to get there. It's a 30-gallon tank. Pulls up to the pump. He says to the guy, 7 gallons. The guy says, you got a 30-gallon tank. You want to come back twice, 3 times? What's the matter with you? No, 7 gallons. Stop. Go, I'm going. Why? Because I want to get there on time. Thank you. And 7 gallons is enough. I don't need more than that. That's the idea of being able to say to the physical, enough, because my focus is extra physical. It's outside the physical world in and of itself. It sees the physical world as a means. That's the blessing that this verse promises. So, in the midst of the care that God takes for all of us, this verse is central. Now, it also says, Hashem is close to those who call upon Him, to all those who call upon Him sincerely. Here, I don't think it's an insertion of the Midas Hadin, the idea of justice and punishment, and so on. If you're not calling sincerely, what are you doing? Mouthing the words? You don't mean the words. You're not thinking the words. You're not connected to the words. That's not a prayer. It's just playing. So I don't think that's like. It's just simply saying God answers prayer. But the next one is taken by some commentators in a certain ironical sense. He will do the will of those who fear Him. He will hear their cry and save them. Is that the same thing twice? Which it could be. It could be. There's a lot of repetition for the sake of emphasis or nuances. But one explanation is no. He will do the wills of those who fear. Those who fear him have will. They want certain things to happen. They've decided that this is important, this is necessary, but not always do they get it right. Not always, in the best of spirits, not always do you get it right. You ask for something, you don't realize that what you're asking for will be destructive to you. You think it'll be constructive, but you don't realize. So first of all, he does what they want, and then when they get themselves into trouble, then he saves them. He hears them cry out, "No, I didn't mean this. This isn't what I wanted." He says, "Okay, you asked for it, I gave it to you. Now you're asking for help, I'll give it to you also." His commitment to them is even when they make mistakes, even when they do something self-injurious, he's there for them for that as well. Protects all those who love him. The wicked he will destroy. Now, there are two things going on here. One is that the wicked have an effect on those around them. And then, this is brought out in a couple of places. And then, when he destroys the wicked, because of the injury that they're causing to other people, it's a double kindness. Number one, it's a kindness to the victims who won't be victimized. But it's also a kindness to the wicked that they shouldn't become even worse. They shouldn't even have more liabilities, more demerits, more failures. It's a double kindness to destroy the wicked. So it's not inconsistent with kindness, but in our terminology, it's the kind of kindness that expresses itself in strictness. You've probably heard of tough love. It's not a new concept. It's thousands of years old. Sometimes that's the only way to communicate the love, is through a certain toughness. And here, if by destroying them he saves them from even greater guilt, that's a kindness to them. So it can be understood as kindness in that way, but it's kindness expressed through strict accountability and through strict justice. It's not just kindness on its own. Yeah.
So what is he meaning by destroy them? In what sense?
So that's a very good question. Let me see what the Yashmid. Let me check something. Check a comparison here. There we go. Yeah. Yashmid really does mean destroy. You see, that we have a blessing, which is called against heretics here, or Birchas Haminim, and it describes the downfall of those who would inform on Jews to the Roman authorities to get them killed by the Romans, little things like that, or try to seduce Jews away from serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But it doesn't say Yashmid. And it's clear from the ending of the blessing that they're still alive. What is taken away is their power, their influence, their self-confidence, but they're not. But they're still alive. Yashmid can mean to end their lives. So there's a certain type of wicked person whose contribution to the world is a net liability, and can't continue to be tolerated. Now, having said that, I want to say one thing which will sort of balance it. When God split the Red Sea so that the Jews could cross, and then afterwards caused the sea to come back together and drown the Egyptians, which, by the way, was not necessary. Could have saved the Jews without that. Split the sea, let the Jews go across. In the morning, close the sea and leave the Egyptians on the other side. No, part of the exercise was to destroy the Egyptians. So the famous Midrash, the angels wanted to sing God's praises, and God says to them, "Ma'aseh yadai tov'im b'yam, v'atem omrim shira." The work of my hands are drowning in the sea, and you're singing my praises? Who is the work of God's hands that are drowning in the sea? It's the Egyptians. Who's drowning them? He is! But it's not a joyous occasion. It's not a joyous occasion. Contrary. God looks at it as the work of my hands, which, according to the circumstances, according to what they did, have to be drowned in the sea, and it's a tragedy. So that's where you see that it's not an act of vengeance, it's not God being angry, the way the foolish academics try to sell it. But it's a recognition of the fact that the world has to go on in a certain way, and they're standing in the way, and the world can't develop in the way that it needs to develop, like the flood, same thing.
No, so is he saving them or saving the people that they would eventually harm? They continue to exist? Or both?
So it can be both. It depends on what stage they're up to. Ben Soramura, for those who know what it is an example of executing someone because if not, he'll be worse. And you're saving him. We are told that he's engaged in certain activities which will end up in murder. So it's better that he should be executed before he commits the murder. And save the victim and save him from committing murder. So there is definitely that idea. So it will vary from case to case. I don't think there's a general rule that it works that way always, but it'll vary from case to case. Anyway, I hope that this helps give Psalm 145 some structure, some meaning, some development, some direction. I know that since then, I went through that. I'm inspired when I say Ashrei. I don't feel lost and jumbled. And it's also a symptom of the fact that our texts have structure, they have meaning, they have direction. But sometimes you don't have the right categories. If left to my own devices, I never would have thought speaking versus not speaking, and who's doing the speaking, and what are the subjects, and how do they go back and forth, and what's the dialogue. I never would have gotten to that. I was just overwhelmed by the multiplicity of ideas and the fact that I couldn't pull it apart the appropriate way when I first did that.